because the management and transparency is what's very important. So once you submit a referral, you're going to have your own Home Advantage account, and it's going to tell you where everything sits. So if you have 10 referrals that you've sent into the network, it's going to give you all 10 referrals. It's going to tell you every milestone that that client is sitting in, whether they're touring homes, whether they're in escrow. And you now can manage through the Home Advantage application as far as what your pipeline looks like for the referrals that you've sent. And so it's pretty sophisticated, and it's all click of a button, guys.
LabCoatAgents podcast.
If I told you that there was going to be a correlation between a BMX freestyler and a massive tech exit, and somehow we're going to tie that back to real estate, would you be able to figure that one out on your own? My guess is no, and I'm actually intrigued by this guest today who I just met a minute ago, literally. So I'm just like you listening today. We've got Ross Hamilton joining us, who was a BMX freestyler who exited a tech company for nearly $100 million, has done tons of real estate investing. And I'm really curious to hear all about this story, because obviously there's no correlation between BMX freestyling and real estate, but the stories behind, upbringings and kind of how people got to where they've gotten is always fascinating to me. So Ross, welcome to the show, and just tell us a little bit about yourself. What led you to where you are today?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm really excited to be here. And, looking back, there are a lot of correlations between extreme sports and real estate. I mean, it's a full contact sport out there when you're in real estate, whether you're an investor or an agent. And what I've found is how you do anything is how you do everything. So yes, it's going to be a really fun show. And I'm now here just to kind of give and share anything I can do to help other people reach, freedom, financial security, which feels really good once you get there.
Yeah, I think that's truth. So tell us your story. You went, obviously you were a freestyler and you got an injury, but so tell us a little bit.
Yeah. So I started riding BMX at a very young age. And I was lucky enough to have the Dave Mira of BMX, the Michael Jordan of BMX, Dave Mira, move to my little town of Wilmington, North Carolina. So I became friends with this gentleman and helped him build his skate park, and I worked for him. And he unofficially became my first mentor. And what that did for me, I got so good so fast once I was surrounded by this individual and his network of other people that were just on other levels. And Jeff, really, he showed me how things I thought were impossible were very possible. He would look at a jump and say, I'm going to do a backflip and I'm going to touch my tire to the ceiling. To me, I'm thinking if you touch your tire to the ceiling, you're going to stop your rotation, fall straight on your head. By the end of the day, the ceiling was filled with tire marks. So just surrounding yourself with people who can, touch the ceiling is such a huge advantage when it comes to moving forward in your own path. So in BMX, I learned to surround yourself with people that were way better than you. That just like in real estate, the people that I was riding with and competing against were my friends as well. And that's kind of how real estate is. Your buddies, it's co-opetition. That the person that bothers you the most, that's your biggest competition, is the best thing that ever happened to you, right? It's making you a better, stronger person. It's driving you in all these weird ways. And I also learned in BMX how to deal with risk, because everything I was doing, there was risk associated. Every time I hit a jump, it could be an injury. So I got okay with risk. And often after I would fall, I'm like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And then I would land it the next time because I was in my own way. Any trick in BMX is simple. I mean, a bar spin, you just throw your bars and catch them. But when you hit that jump, you freeze up. So it helps you get over kind of your mental blocks. And that's what I learned in real estate. But I did suffer a pretty big injury at a pivotal part of my career kind of that 17-year-old kind of getting ready to go to bigger competitions, starting to compete at higher levels. And it put me out for a year and a half. I was in a cast. So by the time I came back, I had kind of, I had to reevaluate what I was going to do. And I found real estate because it was the best option for people, for someone with limited options, but a lot of drive, right? I didn't need a degree. I almost became a real estate agent, but I went a different path. And I was able to start making a lot of money in real estate. And the only thing between me and everything I wanted out of my life was what was between my ears. So that's why I really loved real estate. I went from flipping on my bike to flipping houses. So it was really, it was a nice transition. That injury was the best thing that ever happened to me. That was kind of the birth of how I went from BMX into real estate. By 23, I had been a part of or held about 50 houses.
Wow. So first of all, let's digress for a second. If you don't mind me asking, what was the injury?
I twisted my ankle so far, it broke my leg. So I tore all the ligaments and tendons in my ankle. Those take a long time to heal. And I'll never forget it, Jeff. When I lifted my leg, I could feel the weight of my foot on my skin. Like I felt my skin pulling. So I had, a lot of plates, a lot of screws, and then it took a long time to be able to ride again.
Interesting. And so when you come back from that in a year and a half, so you said you were 17-ish, so you're about 19-ish when you came back, I guess?
Roughly maybe 18,
Sure.
17, 18. Gosh, it was so long ago. I'm 41 now. But when I came back, the people that I was riding with had excelled so much in that year and a half. It was pretty tough. I really struggled with my identity and who I was because, anything I do, I'm all in. Right. So if you didn't ride BMX, I had nothing to talk to you about because that's all I thought about. When I got into real estate, if you didn't invest in real estate, we probably couldn't even really be friends because that's all I was doing. A blessing and a curse looking back at it. But yeah, it was an identity shift and
So
a good one.
So as I'm trying to do the math here, you did this. This is roughly around 2000-ish. Is that
Yeah.
about right? Okay. And so you made that shift. So you come back from an injury, decide that it's probably too steep of a hill to climb to get back into the sport. You decide, I don't want to go to college. I assume that was a decision, obviously, that you made. And then I'm going to invest in real estate. And so what does that look like? So first of all, this is pre-crash.
Pre-crash.
So, it's interesting, it's important to know that. But how does one at your age, because I think this is applicable to anyone, whether you're 20 years old or 50 years old, anyone, and there's a lot of people in the industry right now struggling that would like to do this, but are probably thinking to themselves, I don't have the ability to invest in real estate. So kind of describe and your story and how you went about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I went about it the same way I went about BMX. When I figured out that real estate was the fastest way to become a millionaire, I thought I'd play the odds. As young as I was, if you are under the age of 30, like take real estate really seriously. If you're over the age of 30, everyone I believe should be buying at least one house every 18 months to start building up a portfolio because real estate will eventually be what takes care of you. We can talk for hours about that, but I think it's negligent not to be building a real estate portfolio because of all of the benefits of it generationally. Anyway, so I wanted to find the best of the best in my town. So I went to a local RIA meeting, Real Estate Investment Association. There was a gentleman talking who was doing a lot of business. And I just did anything I could to associate myself and surround myself with this individual. I would just show up at his office, Jeff, and ask him if he needed help with anything. And he's chased me away for a long time. And then one day, his right-hand man didn't show up. And he said, go put these signs up for me. I put the signs up, came back. What do you need now? And I just kind of kept showing up, just like I did with Dave Mira, to where all of a sudden I was kind of working with him and we became partners. I mean, he's like, hey, find me some deals. We will figure something out when you do. So I watched him do a few deals. And I'm like, you know what? This really isn't all that hard. Like real estate investing compared to probably your normal job or other things you're doing, it's really not that complex. You can, if you're trying to learn everything, it can be overwhelming. But if you're just focusing in on a few things, you can buy low, sell high, right? Easier said than done, but that's where I focused. I wanted to just get good at finding deals that couldn't be found on the MLS and working out creative seller finance deals. So that's what I got good at, seller financing, subject to investing, because I couldn't get a lot of loans. I was able to get one loan, Jeff, and I bought one house with that. And from there, I got an equity line on that house, and I pulled 50 grand out, and I leveraged that into almost 50 houses over the next few years.
And mind you, this was in a time when all you needed was a pulse to get a mortgage.
Yes. And, and Jeff, that was the thing. When I got my first loan, I said, what other business could I ever do where someone's going to give me $150,000? I had the worst job in the world, no experience, and I got 150 grand. Now I've had a tech company as well. Raising money for a tech company is way harder, or any business is way harder than real estate. So if you have a block in your head, I don't have the money, just know that there is no business easier on this planet to get the money than real estate. You can't get it for real estate, then you can't get it for anything. But, I used my real estate profits because real estate was so easy to raise money for. I used my real estate profits to fund my tech company, because it was easier for me to make money in real estate than it was for me to go on a roadshow and beg people to give me money on a half-baked idea.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So when it comes to that, let's talk about that first deal. Let's talk about that very first deal where you didn't have a loan for it and you used seller financing. Like, how did you structure that? And what kind of advice would you give to somebody in today's world versus 20 years ago on potentially doing the same thing?
Well, the cool thing is, asking me this question now, I have a way better answer than I did, just a handful of years ago, because I was knocking on the doors of people that were in some sort of financial distress, or I'd find people who inherited properties but lived out of town. All strategies I'm sure people are familiar with now. And I would just try to work out a deal with these individuals, right? I would structure deals to maybe help them find another. I would just solve a problem. Like, there's not one answer here, but what's beautiful is now if you do that same strategy, you can take over a 3 or 4% interest rate. You can go back in time on interest rates and work out a deal, which is so very valuable. And there's so many different ways you can slice and dice it. So Jeff, like, I didn't get too concerned with knowing every possible way to make an offer or pretending like I knew all the answers when I talked to the homeowner. I actually, kind of a funny story here. My middle name is Elliot, and I pretended I worked for this person named Dr. Elliot. I read in a book, people listen to doctors, right? So I'm like, all right, I have this partner, Dr. Elliot, and I was just opening up the door. Hey, are you interested in selling your house? We have a lot of creative solutions. And I got tons of no's, don't get me wrong, but all you need is one yes a year. And after the course of several years, your whole life is different. So I was so motivated to get a deal that if I had to knock on 100 doors to get one, that was a fair trade of time. And when someone wanted something from me, then I had a specific situation that I can go to the few people that I knew and say, hey, I have this lady, this family, they want to sell their house. How should I structure this deal? And when I brought a specific question to a real estate investor or even an agent, they enjoyed talking to me. If I say, how do I invest in real estate? What do I do first? No one wants to answer that question. But if you're like, I have this deal, there's 100,000 in equity, they have to sell in 2 weeks, they want this, how can I structure this? If you can find the deal, money's never a problem. So all I did, Jeff, was I just focused on getting to the next step. I've done a lot of like triathlons and Ironmans. And when I do those, I would just worry about getting to the next telephone pole, right? And people don't want to make offers. They don't want to cold call. So they use excuses. I have to learn everything first before I do those things. They have to have their office set up. They have to have a trash can and like they're putting all these excuses in front of the thing they need to do, which is just get out there and talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to pretend you're a pro. And that's people get in their own way. They think they're posers, or I'll never be able to help someone, but you probably can.
Yeah. So as you related to today's world, which is a lot different than what you experienced, within the dawn of social media and AI and all of these things, and I wouldn't even say dawn anymore of social, but dawn of AI for sure. How can you leverage those tools to potentially create opportunity?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because the tech company that I founded was connectedinvestors.com. We became a conglomerate of a few different companies, also privatelenders.com. So essentially, Connected Investors was like the LinkedIn for real estate investors, founded back in 2005, because the more people I was connected with, I could solve those problems for people. Facebook was only for individuals in an Ivy League school. I was at a community college. So it was, there was a need there for me. So Connected Investors wound up becoming a data company where we helped individuals pinpoint potential sellers that would sell at a discount. Like you can narrow in and find everyone who has, inherited a house, lives out of town, has a tax lien, and has 3 kids, and it's a 2-bedroom house, right? Like you could get as narrowed down as possible. And when I worked for my first, partner, mentor, I would go to the courthouse and I'd pull that information. So I just automated all of that. So there's lots of data products out there that I'm sure your team is well aware of, but that's what I used and have been using. Even after selling Connected Investors, I bought about 176 properties last year to find discounted properties. And those are all great questions to ponder, but you don't need to have the tools to get out there and start doing the actual actions. I need a perfect tool and a perfect marketing funnel. And I swear those are just excuses between you and everything that you want in life. You got to get out there and start talking to people while you're doing those other things. Mm-hmm. But always make sure that you spend time doing those other things first. Say, sure, I can set up my marketing tools, but I need to spend at least 2 hours doing this first. Like put that first and then reward yourself with the automation and stuff like that. And maybe if you have agents underneath you, make sure they're not spending too much time on the automating of nothing. If you don't have a pipeline, there's nothing to automate, right?
Yeah.
I think real human interaction is going to be getting more and more valuable as automation and bots take over. I mean, the Connected Investors, First American bought us, the title company. I mean, the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes is next level. They are tying in a lot of the things that you talked about. I can't get into specifics, but if you haven't used Connected Investors, a lot of agents don't use it. So it could be a really good competitive advantage. And if you used it a long time ago, I'm telling you, every month, this thing is getting better and better. They're investing so much money into it that I was never able to do. And First American has all of the data. They are the refinery of the oil, right? Like they have tens of thousands of people that are getting the data, keying the data in. They sell it to other companies that have streaming softwares or come up with estimates in all sorts of different ways, right? Mm-hmm. So they are the source of data, and now they're making that data available to real estate investors and real estate agents. So definitely stay up to speed on that type of stuff, but don't let it get in front of the actual stuff you need to do.
So when you talk about that activity, and everything else is just an excuse. If somebody came to you today, like you came to so many people before you and said, okay, Ross, what is that thing I should be most focusing on right now to launch this thing off the ground? What is it?
Well, for real estate investors, it's about making offers. Like whenever we would work with people, the more offers people would make, the more successful that they were. That's just number one. For agents, I'm sure it's something similar, but just making sure that there are offers being made, even if they're not, you don't think they're going to be picked up. You're just learning so much by actually making offers and talking to people. And you can get that weird introduction to, you know what, my neighbor actually needs to sell. Like a lot of the dots, you know, you can't plan for the circumstances that are going to get you to, you know, that great deal, or anything around that. So anyway, just making offers for real estate.
But making offers. So where do you even get to that point? You know, so it's nice to have the ability to make the offer, but that means you already, you know, aggregated the people and you found the people, right? So how do you even get to that point?
Yeah. I mean, when we had our data platform, you can log in and hit a button and you had everyone in your town of properties that were not listed that would potentially sell at a discount to an investor based off all of our back end algorithms. So you had more people to talk to than you possibly could every day. Back before the technology, I would go to the courthouse and I would just pull files. And on my way home, I would just stop by people's houses and knock on the doors. And if they weren't home, here's one trick I did that made me a ton of money. If I would see a house that had like tall grass or someone that was in foreclosure, it looked like no one lived there. Mm-hmm. I'm not telling people to do this here. I would actually put a sign in their yard that said investor special, say for sale investor special with my phone number on it. And what that did is I would get a lot of people calling me wanting to buy the house. So I'd build this cash buyer list, which was very difficult back when it was harder to sell the property back then than to find the property. So I'd have a list of 20 or 30 people that wanted to buy it. And then I'd get that call from the homeowner who's like, who the heck are you? Yeah. You're trying to sell. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Probably more choice words than you probably care to
yeah,
share.
But it was more often than not, I was able to apologize, turn the conversation around. And now I had contact with someone that needed to sell their house. But that was because I was in the field and I had these signs and I'm like, I'm just going to stick this in the yard. Right.
What would you apologize? Oops, I didn't mean to put that there.
I would mention that I had people that put signs out for me and they must have put it in the wrong yard.
Okay.
I'm like, oh gosh, no, that's, I'm sorry about that. Or sometimes I would just be straightforward with them. I mean, I've been looking for you. I thought the sign would get you to call. It was actually a better tactic than we buy houses signs, because we buy houses signs, you can get fined big time for that. But this is on private property. So it's a little bit of a loophole. Again, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just telling you to get your phone to ring if your phone's not ringing or you're having a hard time finding someone.
Are you still doing that today?
No,
you don't have to, I assume. So, you know, and obviously this goes back to a time when the technology wasn't near what it is today. So if, you know, based on what you've described, like basically what I've heard you say is the technology exists to give you the data. You don't have to do the research. So what one piece of technology, if somebody was kind of like sitting on the edge of their chair saying, I'm ready, I want to go, where would you point them?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit biased here because I built it and I've seen what they're doing, but
but you're using it too, I imagine, right?
Exactly. The Connected Investors PIN software, it just, you log in every day and you have your list right there. You can export it. You can have APIs to where all of that data goes into your software. I mean, it's because First American owns the data. They're allowed to let you do things that other companies can't. If you're super advanced and you want something crazy, you can call the company up and they can literally do anything because there's no Connected Investors doesn't have a contract with the data provider like everyone else does. Everyone else is buying it from First American, buying from First American, making it look good, but we are direct to the source. Connected Investors is. So if you have a crazy idea, they can, they can help you out with that. And a lot of people have different niches. A lot of people all they want to do is buy land, and you can do that there. Multifamily. So whatever your niche is, you can hone in on a niche through that. It's all the data all the way back to 1890. So it goes back really deep and far. And, it was really fun, Jeff, when I first started working there, I got to see all the data that they couldn't show anyone else. And they're like, should we do anything with this? And the biggest problem I was trying to solve is, how do you contact the owner of a house that's vacant, right? It's just sitting there. You know, there's money there. So many problems there. One of the pieces of data that we found that maybe for agents is easy, but for investors it wasn't, was the previous listing and the previous listing agent. So a house is there vacant. It was listed 10 years ago by Jeff. Here's Jeff's contact info. So, and they were able to call that agent. That agent was able to dig up their contact info. So that was just one of the many cool pieces of data they had in their chest that they didn't know what to do with, because they hadn't been in the streets like me, you know, or the people on your show.
Yeah. Interesting. And so and what year did you sell to First American?
A year and a half ago.
Oh, wow. For that reason.
Right before the crash. Not the crash, but just the correction where tech companies,
you mean right around the end of COVID, I guess.
Yeah. Yes. We sold during COVID.
Got it.
Which we saw a huge surge in revenue due to COVID, like a lot of companies might have. And we were able to sell on an upswing, which was perfect.
Yeah. It's a time to sell. So then I got a totally unrelated question in a way, but I've always curious to ask this, because I get to talk. I'm fortunate. I get to talk to cool people like you. You sell a company for almost $100 million. Why aren't you on an island, on a boat somewhere, just dicking around and doing nothing?
I bought a mountain. I am on a mountain. I don't like boats. My wife doesn't like boats, but having children, even if you have a lot of money, you need stability for the kids, or that's something that my wife and I value. But what I decided to do, when you sell like that, it's not about retirement. To me, it was rewirement. And you don't need to sell for tons of money to rewire everything. What that means is all the priorities are different. So I get to rewire all my priorities. And that was it's been a really exciting time. But what I found is, while I was building, I wasn't very charitable. It was all about me hitting my goals. I always told myself, once I get to the top, then I'll give. It was the excuse I gave myself. It was a horrible excuse to buy. But since then, I founded a charity called Saving Homes, to where we help people save the homes that they're in a really unique way. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see my shirt. If you go to savinghomes.org, you should definitely check it out, because we actually need real estate agents to sign up in all different areas to help support us. When someone's losing their house to foreclosure, I know every trick that an investor is going to pull. I know all of the BS. And if these families lose their house, they can't get a rental, right? Rentals are impossible. They're going to have to move school districts. Their kid's going to lose their best friend. They're going to have to give up their damn dog. Like, I've seen this happen. So now we're coming back with unique, innovative ways to help people save their homes, preserve their equity that they can then use to leverage to send their kids to college, to help their kids buy a house. The generational impact of owning real estate is mind-blowing. It's the number one way to become a millionaire, but it's also the number one way out of poverty in America. So I am on an absolute mission to help people achieve home ownership. And I'm using all my time, energy, and influence to do that, because now I prioritize myself solely on social impact outside of the other side. And Jeff, what's really unique about this mission is, when we help these people save their house in the future, when they refinance or when they sell, the money comes back to the charity so we can help someone else. We're not charging interest. There's no fees. We give someone 10 grand to save their house, whether it's a year or 10 years or 100 years. When that house sells, the money comes back to the charity. We can help someone else. So it has this echo effect. It's like the Energizer bunny of donations. Your donation gives and gives and gives and gives and keeps giving and giving for generations to come, potentially. So I'm really excited to kind of move that. I'm only 41, and I need to be, an entrepreneur my whole life. So I can't just sit still. I just switched what my dopamine was, right? My dopamine before was money. Now it's helping people. And that's where I'm at.
All right,
Yeah.
so I'm going to get back to the buying a mountain, but while we're on the saving homes, I want to ask you some questions because that's fascinating. So, you're going into someone that's what, in financial distress, about ready to lose it to foreclosure. Is that typically what's happening?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, but my first thought is, and I don't mean to be callous here, but a lot of times, there's maybe a story behind the story with someone why they're losing a home. Like, they were very irresponsible with their money, and they did some things maybe, or they have their priorities whacked, or they spend too much time in a casino, or, again, those sorts of things. How do you vet that? Because, I've got a tenure in the mortgage business, and, always talking to borrowers all the time, and, cash out refinances, pay off your credit card debt. And I always felt bad about that because I knew, like, the vast majority of the people I'm doing this for, the reason why they're in that position in the first place is because they're not responsible. And so I'm going to pay off your credit card debt. So what? You can go do it again. And that's what was always in my head. And so that would be my question to you, is how do you vet something like that for something like this? So you essentially don't get screwed and you're helping people just do it all over again.
Yeah, no, and that's number one. And being an entrepreneur and a real estate investor, that's kind of where my head was as well. And like I said, when I first started, I would knock on doors and I would be invited into houses and I'd sit down and I'd see these families. And 55% of foreclosures are because of an unforeseen medical bill, which is, not someone doing the wrong thing. Maybe they had a hard time getting ahead. And our primary focus is on homes with children, because just because their parents are, even if they were a little bit negligent, they made a bad decision here or there, the stability for the children is kind of our number one. So we pinpoint people with multiple children. Those are the first people we look for. Because even if they only stay in the house for another year or two, that's stability. That's being with their best friend for another year or two. Like, it is monumentally huge. And if they're going to fall back into default, which a lot of them are, I understand that. There's enough equity in the houses for the charity to get its money back. And we can also help them sell their house without getting taken advantage of by a real estate investor. We can make sure they have a place to go. So we're looking for soft landings, and there will be families that it's just a temporary patch, but the money comes back to the charity. So great. Sure. There's other families that it will be a generational patch. And that's kind of really what we're focusing on. But yeah, I mean, I've been in the houses with those people, and it's a mixed bag, and I'm really excited to get in there and roll up my sleeves as an entrepreneur and come up with with solutions. We have some really innovative stuff we're doing, Jeff. In 2025, people will be able to lower their house payments in some very innovative ways by selling percentages of their house to investors. Because if you can't afford $2,000, you can't afford $2,000. Maybe you can afford 1,200. So an investor can come in and purchase a piece of their property. They'd rather have 52% of their house than 0%.
Yeah. Does this have to do with blockchain?
A little bit. Yeah. So there's a lot of for-profit companies that I am very tied into, that I'm watching them work on that. And once they have it figured out, I want to implement it into the charity. But, the future of real estate is fractional.
Yeah. NFTs, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Every house will be like its own stock. You'll be able to sell bits and pieces of your house. And Wall Street wants real estate to be fluid and fast. And it's happening. So yeah, it's definitely exciting.
Funny you mentioned that. So I interview and monthly a company, the gals who run the company called Consortia, who are a big part of this. Consortia is a big part of building the blockchain for real estate, and they're working closely with FedNow and all this kind of stuff. So if you're listening to this and you have no idea what we just spit out, you need to start paying attention. Go type this stuff into a Google search or YouTube search and go consume about fractional real estate, blockchain, as it relates to real estate, not to cryptocurrency, because those that embrace and understand it will give themselves a leg up. Okay, so Ross, let's get back to some real estate questions. So I like doing this just because, again, now getting to know you a little bit, knowing where your headspace is as a human being, it's fascinating to know that, because I've always questioned that. Like, what would I do if I just came into, 5-10 million, which is enough to just be done at any age, basically, if you do it right. And obviously you came into a hell of a lot more than that. So you bought a mountain. What the hell does that mean? You can't buy mountains.
Yeah. We were, there was a wedding facility that was struggling because of COVID. It was, so much acreage, multiple properties, pavilions, lakes, mountain bike trails. Yesterday I was 3 hours in the woods, just riding my bike, building trails and stuff like that. So, when we saw this place, we're like, that's like the dream. I can see the city of Asheville from the top of my mountain. In the distance, it's like this big. It looks like New York, and it's, just building a self-sustainable, just little, Garden of Eden really is what we're, is what we're doing out here. And also building a really, really cool house. I mean, Jeff, my pool in my house.
Pool in your house?
No, well, almost, but the doors open up to where it's like, 20-foot wide. It's all slate inside, goes slate outside. I press a button and the slate submerges into the water. And I can choose how deep I want my pool, which is really cool, because you have kids by, you can just have a little 2-foot pool. It goes all the way down to 6 feet.
Wow.
So, and you would never know there was a pool there. My daughter just wants to tie me up and press the button and have me like slowly, submerge down into the water and save me.
Wow. I've never even heard of that before. That is really awesome.
Yeah. So we're doing some cool stuff up here, but I just really wanted to just dive into nature and try to get out of the competitive aspect that I had been in for so long. I feel like a recovering capitalist right now, because that's been my DNA since I was like 10.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to see the other side of the world where every decision isn't focused on money, which was how I was for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in your defense, so are most human beings, to be honest. If you got that in your flowing through your blood, it is what it is. But that's why I asked the question, because I'm always curious, because most uber successful people don't just quit working. They just can't. And so it's kind of fascinating to hear the responses. So let's get back on the real estate. I always have fun digressing and going down rabbit holes of personal stuff. I think it's cool. I'm actually, and I'm not as you already know, I don't follow a template when I interview anyone. We just talk. But most guests have a template. And, your team sent me over a template, and there's some interesting questions that I want to ask you from that template. One of them was about the use of drones is the future of home buying. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, drones for marketing a property, but what do you mean the future of home buying done by using drones?
It's going to be, I will explain it. But I created an actual video. People would always interview me and they'd say, hey, what's the future of real estate look like? I sat at the helm of a huge social network of a few million, then First American. So I got to see inside an $8 billion company. So I had unique viewpoints, and I had been in the trenches doing it. So I had unique viewpoints, and I watched where people would bump their heads against scaling. And it was always the inspection, like seeing inside the house. Like the last time I bought real estate, I bought the 176 properties at one time. That's kind of how I'm buying real estate now. And, the biggest challenge was seeing inside all of those houses. So I created this video. I could give you a link to it. You can put it in the notes. It shows, a driverless car pulling up to a house, trunk opens, drone flies out, uses Lidar technology to scan the entire house to find all the repairs, flies out of the house and gives the seller an offer, and they hit accept and they sell. Like, that will happen eventually, because it's about removing the inefficiencies and increasing the velocities in real estate. So the future of real estate to me is a blend of that. And then we touched on it, the fractional ownership that's what I've been touting for the last 5 years. And it's cool to see it, start to come full circle.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to listen to your podcast with that other team.
Yeah. There's a bunch of episodes. It's interesting how it's evolved too, by the way. It's We started this probably 8 months ago, and now it's now Fed now is in the game, and they've been meeting with the Fed and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty fascinating where they're at. Happy to make an introduction to them as well if you're
Yeah,
curious.
very much.
Okay, that's cool. I've never heard that before. That was
Yeah.
a first. So we're going to replace inspectors now. So you're going to piss people off there. Got it. All right. So how is this is probably a passionate one for some people, because I think there's a lot of thoughts or conspiracies around, how much is the government kind of manipulating what's going on in the world? And you mentioned Wall Street and insider trading. How is it manipulating the housing market? What's your take on where we are, where we went from 2s and 3s, and they're always trying to fix the economy with low interest rates. Now here they are trying to fix the economy with high interest rates, but a lot of people don't understand the inflation and all that kind of stuff. How would you articulate that from your place?
Yeah. A lot of different ways we can go with that, but people, ask me, hey, is now a good time to be buying real estate? And anytime I've slowed down buying real estate because of, buying into the media, I've always regretted it. And because I've always been able to buy at a discount. So it's always the right time to buy real estate if you can buy with favorable terms or at a slight discount, right? So anyway, that's the answer to that. But the Wall Street coming in, they are we didn't have that during the last crash. I survived the last crash because I was in a military town and they had plenty of funding to buy real estate. I was making so much money during the crash because of where I was investing. Mm-hmm. But now you have Wall Street coming in. You're not going to see foreclosures like you used to see them and short sales because banks can't own real estate, right? But these huge Wall Street firms and the banks are sitting down together right now. And they're just like, hey, I got $2 billion. Let me get some real estate. And they're trading real estate in other ways. So it never makes it to the street. It never makes it to us. So I don't know how the government is involved there or lack of being involved. I just know there's more money. There's an endless supply of money to buy real estate, to buy hard, tangible assets. And I'm building a house right now, like I mentioned, and I am like blown away with the cost of building compared to when I used to do a lot of rehabs. Mm-hmm. And that's why Wall Street's buying as much as they can, because the replacement cost, they'll value houses based on how much it would cost to actually build that house today. And if they can buy for less than it costs to build, they're going to buy it. Yeah. It's a deal.
Yeah.
So there's just so much money flooding into real estate right now. Still, that's what I'm seeing. I don't think that if we fast forward 10 years seems like even too much.
Can we fast forward just two?
Yeah, I was gonna say usually it's 3 years, 3 years. But I don't believe that my children will be able to be a mom and pop real estate investor by the time they're ready, because all the it'll be like the margins will be small. It'll be Wall Street. They'll be buying like REITs and pieces of their friends' houses. It'll just be different. The days of going to the courthouse and all those inefficiencies will get worked out. How real estate agents are going to stay relative, through all that is going to be really, really interesting. And I think time will tell. You guys spend a lot of money lobbying, so
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how
we'll see how that goes. But I mean, even when I sold my house, I used a real estate agent for a lot of different reasons. So I think you guys are protected for a little while.
Yeah, I would agree. For the foreseeable future, humans are still going to be a big part of the process. And AI even says that. I've asked that question, will you replace real estate agents? And it's fascinating to hear its answer. Now, maybe it's being PC, but it basically says that, there's just too much emotion involved in something like this. And that's where humans are always going to be necessary.
But for on the investment side, though.
Yeah, different.
That's where agents will be replaced first. And
because there is no emotion there. It's an investment. Yeah.
My favorite, just to piggyback off that, my favorite AI quote I heard is, "You're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by someone who uses AI."
Correct. We say the same thing. Yep. So. Yep. All right. Well, and by the way, newsflash, Ross, the reason why your house is costing so much to build is because you have a pool that has a floor that moves. That's why your house is so expensive to build.
Isn't that what everyone puts in their house? Isn't that like a starter home? No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, I mean building on the top of a mountain is challenging.
Also, yeah.
And it's, they have to like fly some stuff in, but even that aside, I'm just looking at the raw cost of certain things.
Last question.
Right.
What is your short-term outlook for the real estate market, just from your seat, sitting from a seat where it doesn't affect you? It doesn't matter what happens. You're set. What do you see? Because we just talked about that, with what AI could and couldn't do. And so if I'm a real estate agent, living in this world right now where everyone is struggling now, some different degrees, but everyone's down. There's just not as much business, transacting right now. So where do you see things going in the next 1 to 2 years?
Well, with where my focus is with my charity, I understand that it's not if something's going to happen, it's just when. I cannot predict when there's going to be corrections. I like to watch, the employment rate is really important. But I am personally I'm keeping a lot of my cash on the sidelines. I'm buying good deals when they come across, but there will be some great buying opportunities, in the future at some point. I can't believe it's what lasted this long. Again, it doesn't mean don't buy. It just means buy right, and then just spool up for a great wealth shift, which is happening.
Yeah. So did I just hear you say that this will cycle like everything has, and hang in there and position yourself for what is potentially going to come? We don't know when, we don't know how, but there's going to be opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's the general thinking. It's not if, it's just when, right? There's cycles for a reason.
Yeah.
And it seems like we're at the end of the cycle, but we will see what happens with the election. Yeah, I think that's going to, there's so many unknowns. That's everyone I talk to there's no historical data to look back on with all of the stuff that's going on.
All the prognosticators have now been wrong over the last 18 months, and now they've gone quiet because they know, like, I don't think I can predict this. So let's just, But
Jeff, when there's change, there's opportunity.
Yeah.
So just keep your mindset in opportunity mindset. Don't blame the media. Don't blame anything. There is tons of opportunity. Exciting time to be building a business right now. Building from this stage, having an old business right now. It's like having an old car company. They're having to throw away all their old technology to have electric now, right? It's great to be able to build an electric car company today and not have all that legacy BS, which a lot of companies do have.
Yeah. Awesome. Ross, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, you already mentioned savinghomes.org, but if somebody wants to just, directly connect with you, what's the best place to do that?
You know what? Actually, email me. I'll probably be the only one to ever say that. My email address, maybe you can even put it in the notes, ross@successcap.com, ross@successcap.com. If you have any interest in being part of our mission, if you want to be an agent in your area when people do need to sell, reach out to us. We're starting to build the team. I'm doing this the same way I did other stuff, Jeff. I am pulling together the best of the best. Our dream team is what I call them. Collectively, we're worth $1 billion, and we're going in to help people first save the houses they're in, and then be able to provide affordable housing for people. Not affordable rentals, affordable housing. We're donating a house to someone in the next few weeks. So we're doing a lot of cool things. This November is when it officially kicks off, the charity. But we've been building a lot of the foundation there. So yeah, ross@successcap.com. Shoot me an email. I'm not allowed to sell my real estate information anymore. So if you email me, I'll just give you everything I used to sell on buying properties below market. I'll put my drone video in there. Cool. You can see that. And I wrote a few books. If you're in your 20s, one of the books I wrote was Real Estate Investing in Your 20s. I wrote that when I was in my 20s, before I had done my first deal. So it's written like a diary. I've never seen another book like that. Like, I started writing the book, Jeff, when I was broke. And I published it once I had a net worth of $1 million. So you get to see it's like a driver's, it's like being in a passenger seat, not a look back, but you're coming with me. Anyway, I'll just give you everything I got. Just shoot me over an email. And if you want to be part of the charity, please, I mean, just throw $5 in there. It helps just to have donations come in so I can start working out all the systems and stuff like that. 5, 10, 100, $10,000, anything you can do to help.
No pressure.
It's a tax write-off. And if you know someone that's in foreclosure, you can send them to Saving Homes.
Yeah.
Because currently, if your uncle's in foreclosure and you give him 10 grand to pull him out, that's not a tax write-off.
Yeah.
You can go to Saving Homes and you can donate to Saving Homes for a specific friend or family. And then you get the tax write-off, which is a huge thing.
Yeah, great vehicle.
So there's, when you come across people in foreclosure, if they need help, they can go to Saving Homes. And agents are going to be a big part of what we're doing. So I was really excited to be here. And
Give
Jeff,
that email address one more time.
Ross@successcap.com. Successcap, like Jeff is wearing, .com. It was my old lending company. I just had the domain. So yeah, just shoot me over an email. And I look forward to hearing from your people.
Awesome, man. Thank you for being a guest. It's been a fun interview.
Absolutely.
LabCoatAgents Podcast.